Hi there, and welcome back to our Starsector pirate campaign. So at the end of the last episode, we encountered another Persian League trader, and we were able to salvage a shrike from that encounter. Now, having safely made our way back to Umbra, we can restore that shrike and outfit it with weapons and hull mods. The first thing we're going to do is build in hardened shields. As with pretty much all high-tech ships, the shrike already has great shields, so building in hardened shields just reinforces what's already one of its best attributes. And of course we're going to add safety overrides and hardened subsystems as well. Unfortunately, just like with the Omen, we really don't have a stockpile of good energy weapons to outfit this thing, so we're just going to have to make do with whatever we have lying around. In this case, an ion beam, ion cannon, mining laser, and hammers. And we're going to round things out with some vents and capacitors. The addition of safety overrides and general lack of good weapons means that it already vents pretty well, so I'm going to focus more on capacitors in this case. That, along with its hardened shields, means that it'll really be able to absorb quite a lot of punishment in combat. And while we're docked, we might as well make some changes to our brawler. The autocannon has served us well until now, but it's really not in the same range bracket as the rest of our weapons, so I think we can safely change it out for some dual machine guns. And that gives us enough points to upgrade our single machine gun on the left side to a dual machine gun as well. I'm also going to rename our Omen to William Wallace, in recognition of its exploits at the end of the previous episode. Let's also take a moment to see what the Starship Legends mod is doing for us right now. So as you can see, our flagship has already been in a couple of fights, and it's acquired a few reputations based on its performance in those fights. Each of these reputations grants a small modifier to its base stats that can increase over time if it continues to do well in combat. The mod also generates reports, so you can see how each ship is performing and how that's affecting its reputation. Separately from that, I'm also receiving reports from the Combat Results mod. These reports offer a much more detailed breakdown, showing not only which weapons dealt the most damage, but also whether that damage was done to shields, armor, or hull. With that out of the way, I think we're finally ready to get going. So in the last episode, we demonstrated that we're quite capable of taking on those smaller trade fleets. So this time around, I think we'll try our hand against something a little bit bigger. Let's head into hegemony territory and see if we can find something to take on. Alright, so this convoy is fairly decently sized. Despite the several larger ships in here, the one I'm actually most concerned about is the Gremlin. It's the only one that really has the speed and the potential to do a whole lot of damage all at once. I'm also seeing the potential for a couple of these smaller ships to gang up on something that's too slow to evade them. So I think what I'm going to do is go out on my own first, and try to eliminate as many of them as I can ahead of time before we send in the rest of the fleet. I find that doing this has a couple of advantages. First of all, it allows me to focus on piloting rather than having to do that and command a fleet at the same time. It also tends to result in there being fewer enemy pieces on the board. The AI will usually only deploy what it thinks it needs to comfortably eliminate anything you've sent out. So in this case, since it's just me and the brawler, they've sent out a few destroyers and a couple of frigates. And in a stand-up fight, we would be utterly outmatched. Fortunately for us, we don't care at all about fairness. And we're really going to be abusing the fact that we're flying something that has a lot of speed and firepower in a very small package. Even better for us is that the AI has done a really good job of getting in its own way here. You can see that the Hammerhead has really spent a long time just trying to avoid being hit in the back by its own bombers. And that's given us an opportunity here to spend some time alone with it. Unfortunately, the Enforcer is coming in to cover this Hammerhead's retreat, but that's okay. We were able to do a little bit of damage, and that's really all we're looking for at the moment. I'm just picking and prodding, and if we pick up a kill here or there, that's great. But I mostly just want to weaken them enough so that when we are ready to engage with our full fleet, it should be a much easier fight overall. And it does look like the destroyers have overextended a bit, so we're going to see if we can take this opportunity to eliminate this carrier really quickly while they're still trying to catch up. I'm one thing you're going to see me doing fairly often is actually using the target that I'm shooting at to provide cover against other enemies. And it looks like the Dominator is finally coming into the fight, so we're going to back off a little bit and see if we can get these destroyers to do something stupid before we disengage. And it looks like the Hammerhead is coming forward again. You can see that he's activating his accelerated ammo feeds basically as soon as he gets in range. But we're nimble enough to avoid him while he has that active, and then charge in when we're ready to activate our own accelerated ammo feed. And we've almost run out of peak performance time here, so I think I'm just going to retreat for now, and we can assess what to do next. Interestingly, retreating is something that I don't see a lot of people doing all that often, but in the right situations it's actually incredibly powerful, because in exchange for a reduction in combat readiness, you're gaining all of that peak performance time back, and that can give you back a lot more usable fight time than you would have had if you had just stayed in that same engagement. Alright, so we were able to take out 3 ships, including that carrier. And looking at what they have left, I'm now much more confident that we can take it on with the fleet we have. So as usual, we're going to start by having the smaller ships follow the destroyers. Except for the Omen, who I actually want following me at the moment. It's a great little supporting ship, and I think we may actually need the additional cover in this one. So it looks like the Gremlin is trying to see if it can engage us at the moment. Looking at his speed, I actually think we might be able to take him. He's obviously going to stay phased anytime he's in our firing arc, but we're actually fast enough that we should be able to keep pace even while he's phased, so that when he eventually fluxes out, we'll be able to hit him. I'm also going to set an avoid order on this Dominator just so our ships don't try to do anything reckless. And look at our poor Omen back there, trying to help out but not doing a whole lot. And it looks like while we were chasing that Gremlin, the rest of this fleet has spread out quite a bit, which is great because now it'll be much easier to pick them off one at a time. So this time around it was the Hammerhead that came in to save the Enforcer. Unfortunately, we are going to have to break up the little bromance here. While we're on that, let's see if we can find something useful for the rest of our ships to do. Once again, I'm just going to try and back out and avoid as much of his accelerated ammo feed as possible before we go back in. Alright, now our turn. I really try to educate whenever possible, but unfortunately for this guy, the lesson came too late. And it looks like our Shrike is finished up down south, so let's get everyone up here to finish off what's left. Unfortunately, this Enforcer is very rudely refusing to break away from the Dominator, so I think we're going to have to wait for the rest of our fleet to come in here and help us out. And I'm trying to time when I raise my shield so that we can vent a little bit of flux in between his shots, but I'm doing a pretty poor job at the moment. Alright, I think we got the Enforcer this time. Let's just continue to try to keep him in between us and the Dominator. And now we're just going to park ourselves behind this Dominator. So the tactic I normally use anytime I'm taking on a ship much larger than whatever I'm piloting is usually just to shoot it until it dies. In the case of the Dominator, this can take a while. Alright, well that took some doing. I think they just have a monitor left now. Oh, no, never mind. Great, so I think we have enough CR left to take out most of these freighters. Let's pursue them and see what happens. And I'm just going to deploy some of our ships that still have decent CR. There's no point risking any serious malfunctions in this one. We're going to go full assault and have our guys focus on the ones most likely to escape. This should only take a few minutes, but if you don't care to watch the fireworks, I'll add a link on screen so you can skip it. For those of you that decided to stay, let me take a moment to explain why I like the Luddic Path Brawler. First of all, it has safety overrides built in, which is a huge plus. I normally take safety overrides on my flagship anyway, so having it built in just immediately saves me 15 ordnance points that I can put into something else. It also has accelerated ammo feeds, which doubles the rate of fire of kinetic weapons for a few seconds every time you use it. This works great for us since we're using machine guns and assault chain guns, both kinetic weapons. Both of these weapons do a lot of damage in exchange for having very short range. But the range limitation doesn't really hinder us, as having safety overrides means that our range past 450 units is already severely limited. All of that together means the Brawler is really incredibly capable for its size, and especially at this early stage of the game, probably one of the best ships we could hope to have. I suppose while you're here, I can take a moment to address you personally. Yes, you. Have you been sleeping well recently? When was the last time you took a moment to just breathe? If you haven't, consider trying it now. Just close your eyes and breathe. In through your nose. Enjoy the sound of spaceships exploding in the background, and out through your mouth. Have you stretched recently? If not, consider doing that now. Just stand up and stretch your arms as high as you can. If you're on the toilet, maybe consider doing this later, or things could get messy. On a more serious note, if you guys do have any questions, either Starsector related or otherwise, please don't be shy and leave them down in the comment section below. I'm still fairly new to all of this, and interacting with you guys via the comments has definitely been a highlight of the experience so far. So cheers to all of you who have already left a note, and thank you so much for all of your kind words. It means a lot to me that you guys are watching and enjoying the content so far. And one final thing before we wrap this fight up. So I do intend to leave these pursuit battles in the videos for those of you who are interested in watching them, but as you can tell, some of them can get rather long, and I usually won't have much gameplay insight to offer while they're happening, as They mostly consist of chasing down and blowing up these freighters. So, are there any topics you would be interested in listening to me talk about as they're happening? If you have any ideas, feel free to leave a comment down below. Alright, well, now that we're finally done with that, let's see what we can pick up. The Hammerhead and Enforcer both ended up in standard salvage, so we'll definitely get those. And in difficult recovery, we do have the Monitor Frigate. I think we'll probably spend a story point to pick that up, as it has the Fortress Shield's ability and can really absorb an absolutely massive amount of damage before going down. And the Insulated Engine Assembly hull mod ended up in our salvage as well. That's a really nice pickup. As for everything else, we'll prioritize the weapons, and we definitely don't have enough room to pick up everything at the moment. If I remember later, perhaps we'll circle back to get that, but for now, let's go find a station to offload our cargo. Looking at our map, it seems like we're not too far from either Karas or Garnier. Let's try Garnier for now. You probably saw me taking a peek at the Luddic Church fleet, but I think that's hubris talking. Let's ignore them and carry on. Alright, so we safely made it to Garnier. I've sold off the heavy armaments and any excess supplies that I don't think we're gonna need immediately. We also had 2 skill points, which I decided to put into salvaging and reliable engineering. I always look at bulk transport and think that it's probably the better option, but it's hard for me to resist taking a skill called salvaging on a salvage-only run. On the other hand, the choice between reliable engineering and damage control was really a toss-up. Damage control reduces the repair time of weapons and engines by 50%. This is particularly significant to me, as I do find that the most common reason I might lose a flagship is loss of thrust control at a critical moment that sends me flying into a ball of enemy cruisers without any ability to back up. So it can be a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card for if we ever mess up. Alternatively, reliable engineering provides a boost to our maximum combat readiness. And in case you didn't know, increasing the CR of a ship above 70% actually improves its capabilities in various ways. So the decision really came down to whether we wanted that safety net or a consistent and long-lasting buff, and I ended up choosing the latter. You can see I'm also adding our usual selection of hull mods to the Hammerhead here, including hardened subsystems, safety overrides, and hardened shields, and I think we will be flying that from now on. In terms of capabilities, it's really quite similar to the Brawler. They both have accelerated ammo feed, as well as 2 medium forward-facing ballistic weapons, supported by 2 smaller weapons. So it's really a trade-off between speed and flux. The Brawler is definitely always going to be the more nimble of the two, but having so much more flux to work with, the Hammerhead can stay in the fight longer, and take more of a beating if it ever needs to. And that's a trade I'm willing to make if it means we can take on tougher targets. You can see I've already taken the assault chain gun off of the Brawler and put it on the Hammerhead. I'm going to pair that with a second assault chain gun plus 2 dual light machine guns. That will mean that we're only left with light assault guns for the Brawler, but I'm willing to let it take a more backseat role now. I've also taken the weapons off the Mule. Now that we have the Enforcer, I just don't think we'll be needing this thing on the front lines much longer. If we run into a particularly hard fight where I think we might need it, I might press it back into service, but for now I'm okay with it taking a purely logistical role. And do you remember what I said about this kite? Yeah, I wasn't kidding. Alright, let's take a few days to go pick up that loot that we left behind from the previous battle, and while we're doing that I can explain what we did with the other ships. For the Enforcer, our weapon selection still isn't excellent, so I just added an assortment of whatever weapons we had lying around. And for hull mods, I added safety overrides, heavy armor, and auxiliary thrusters. The heavy armor helps to bolster the Enforcer's already excellent armor stats, and auxiliary thrusters helps to offset the loss of maneuverability. I also find that the Enforcer sometimes has trouble turning to face more nimble threats, so that should help out there as well. And finally, the monitor is really only there to be a punching bag, so I equipped a salamander for some light harassment, slapped on hardened shields, and called it a day. You can see I'm taking a quick look at some of these trade fleets, but our cargo holds are already full, so unless there's a ship in there that I particularly want to try and salvage, I don't think we're going to take any of them right now. Alright, and I think we're finally ready to set off again. The only really significant thing we did station side was sell off all of the excess supplies that we picked up, and that gave us enough money to restore the Enforcer. I think what I really want to do now is take on a small military fleet. We've made some fairly significant changes to our fleet composition recently, and I'm eager to try out our new capabilities against something that might be a bit more challenging. You can see that I passed on both of those trade fleets just now. One of them was probably a bit too big for us, whereas the other one was kind of small, so I'm really looking for something that's just right. A Goldilocks fleet, if you will. This patrol here is probably a bit bigger than I would have liked, but not impossible, and I don't want to be too picky, so let's give it a try. The main thing giving me pause is actually the fighters. Gladius fighters are not the best fighter wing in my opinion, but there's enough of them in this case to really put a damper on my normal solo harassment strategy. Still, we can give it a try, and if things start to get hairy, we can always back out. So it looks like we have a Kite, Enforcer, and that Legion to deal with. I had rather been hoping the AI would send out just the Dominator and some combination of smaller ships, but I guess we can't be too picky about that right now. What I'm going to do here with the fighters is back up and try to funnel them into our frontal firing arc, where the assault chain guns can really do some work. Our machine guns are turreted, so they can do some damage while the bees are buzzing around our face, but it's really not ideal. Alright, that's the first wave taken care of. Let's see if we can rush in and do some damage before they regroup. We really want to be careful not to overcommit here. Individually the fighters aren't too much of a problem, but if we let a group of them stay on us for too long, we're eventually going to start losing armor. It looks like we have another brief reprieve. Let's see if we can focus down this Kite. Alright, so that wasn't too bad of an exchange. Unfortunately, it looks like the fighters are coming in sort of staggered now, and that's going to make it much harder for us to be able to find those pockets of time when we can rush in and do some real damage. I don't know if we'll be able to do much more on our own here. What I actually want to try and do now is to lure the Legion as close to the bottom edge of the map as possible. If I can get it close to the point at which the rest of my fleet would enter the map, I might be able to surprise it with a reinforcement and then just overwhelm it with numbers. In the meantime, it looks like we might have another shot at taking on this Enforcer. I'm not going to commit here, but we'll see how much damage we can do while we have the opportunity. Alright, nearly there. Just a little bit closer. Alright, here we go. Let's send in everything and have it target the Legion. And I'm just going to stay on the Enforcer and try to focus it down. I don't want it being a distraction. Alright, Enforce it down. Let's get behind that Legion. The good news is the Legion has pretty much no defenses in its rear arc. So if we just park ourselves back here, the only thing we'll have to worry about is the fighters. Alright, Legion down. And it looks like the reinforcements are already streaming in here from the top of the map. So I'm going to order a full retreat now. I'd like to come back in here with full peak performance time to deal with what's left. I'm just going to linger for a little bit longer to make sure that all of our ships make it out safely. Alright, looks like we made it out cleanly, so no casualties and the Legion is down. So what's left? There's a Dominator and a handful of smaller ships. I think that should be okay. Let's get back in there and clean this up. So I'm gonna have the Omen follow me and divide up the rest between the Enforcer and Shrike. Just like in the previous fight, the Gremlin is gonna be a focus if we can reach it early on. And we'll probably save the Dominator for last, as it's too large of a target to take on with smaller ships still buzzing about. This Hammerhead seems to have broken away from the pack, so let's follow it for a while and see what happens. Unlike the Brawler, I think we can just take this head on. We have quite a lot more flux to work with, and this Hammerhead has dual heavy mortars, which are really going to have a tough time getting through our shields. Since the Dominator's firepower is almost entirely forward-facing and it takes so long to turn around, we can actually safely engage targets directly behind it. And we should have pretty much no trouble maneuvering to stay in its rear arc. This Centurion is going to be the worst kind of annoying, I can tell already. Yeah, we're just gonna let him go for now. If we stay on him, he's just gonna keep kiting around that Dominator. There's no point wasting our CR while we have other things to take care of. What do I want to do here? Let's have everyone engage the Dominator so they're not just idling about. And this wolf just made the mistake of wandering in front of us. Oh well, you live, you learn. You die, you burn? And back to our old friend the Centurion. Looks like this officer has the system's expertise skill, so they're actually able to engage that dampener 4 times in a row. Very annoying. And it looks like our Shrike is just fumbling about. Unfortunately, we still haven't found any good energy weapons, so it's really not able to do a lot of damage at the moment. Don't worry, buddy. We'll find you something better soon. Look at our monitor, just doing a fantastic job of eating all those rockets. Okay, well, that was a bit of a slog. Well, we got a few more ships to chase down, and once again, if we can pick up a dram, that would be fantastic. The extra fuel capacity would go a long way towards extending our range, and maybe allow us to do some exploration in the near future. And as usual, I'm going to start by having our guys chase down the ones most likely to get away. If you prefer to skip this fight, I'll add a thingy so that you can get right to the end. So, for those of you who have decided to stay, let me briefly describe my typical experience in Starsector. So, over the years that I've been playing Starsector, I've accumulated this list of optional rules that I like to play by. And that includes some of the rules that I'm following now, such as only taking ships from post-battle salvage. I've also found myself settling into a rather predictable series of gameplay behaviors, which I briefly alluded to in the first episode. So in a vanilla Starsector campaign, or if I'm choosing the free start in Nexerelin, the first thing I'll do is head to Corvus and try to pick up a couple of pirate frigates from around Garnier. Then if I'm playing vanilla, I'll head over to Galatia and see if I can get a hammerhead, or maybe an enforcer from the rebel miners. Or if I'm playing Nexerelin, I might linger a little bit longer in Corvus, or head over to Kamari Kandom and fight some Pathers. And then I'll just start picking up as many bounties as I can. This process can usually take anywhere from, say, 12 to 24 months, depending on how long it takes me to get a battleship. Once I have my first capital ship, usually either a conquest or an onslaught, then I'll start doing some exploring. But by following this blueprint, if you will, I basically have the first several cycles of the game already mapped out, and that can start to feel stale pretty quickly. So I'll start a new campaign with different mods or promising that I'll do something differently, but I still find it quite hard to break the habit sometimes. So what about you guys? Do you try to do something new and fresh every time? Or do you find yourself always settling back into the same routine? Feel free to share your stories down in the comments below. Alright, so that's all taken care of. Let's see if we got anything good out of it. Ah, we got the Legion and a dram. Well, that opens up quite a few possibilities for us. But I think I'll keep you guys in suspense for just a little bit longer. If you want to see what we decide to do with these ships, be sure to tune in next time. And until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you out there in the sector.